So, does anyone care to touch on this further?
I think all of us just using our own common sense, whether you're a psychiatrist, psychologist, or not, can say, yeah, of course, things that have happened to us may affect how we think, and how we think may affect how we talk and the things that we do. But it driving our subconscious? Is it driving our behavior as adults? Partly.
Well, if you start drinking at the age of 12, then drinking as an adult is probably driven by that because you're an alcoholic. My name is Jerry. I left MAGA, and learning to reparent your inner child is not necessarily an easy thing to do. Why do I mention that? Because Allie Beth Stuckey, this gal, she's she's the one who wrote that book, Toxic Empathy. Anyway, she's got this wild take that inner child shadow work is some sort of new age practice, and that Christians need to be aware of this TikTok self help trend. Girl, for starters, it's not a TikTok self help trend. I mean, it's not just exclusively that, right? It's a big thing as a part of recovering from childhood trauma. Anyway, um, let's let's match 10 years of cognitive behavioral therapy against whatever it is she's working with.
So, I want to talk about what the inner child concept is and how it originated. That tells us a lot about what it means and if Christians should be toying with it. It's not just a social media fad. This psychological term, inner child, actually has roots in the New Age movement. And quite frankly,
Oh, I'm gonna need some medicine for this. New Age movement, huh? So Freud was New Age, Jung was New Age. I I I don't see how their work equates to crystals and tarot cards.
has parts of it that a Christian really just shouldn't tolerate and shouldn't play with. So let's go back to its beginnings. Sigmund Freud, a lot of you know who he is. He was an Austrian physician. He was often called the father of modern psychology. He argued that early childhood experiences form unconscious patterns in our thinking. And he popularized the idea that repressed childhood trauma is what drives much of our adult behavior. So already you can see.
And L. Ron Hubbard loved Freud. In fact, Edward Bernays, Freud's nephew. Anyway, it's a whole thing. Let's get back to Allie.
That some of that could be considered true, and other parts of it you're like, well, is that true? Does it really drive all of our unconscious patterns of thinking, or even most of our unconscious patterns of thinking? Does it really contribute majorly to who we are and what we do as adults? I think all of us just using our own common sense, whether you're a psychiatrist, psychologist, or not, can say, yeah, of course, things that have happened to us may affect how we think, and how we think may affect how we talk and the things that we do. But it driving our subconscious? Is it driving our behavior as adults? Partly.
When you're living in survival mode, yes, it most definitely is. When you're trapped in a domestically violent environment, be it a parent, a spouse, anybody in the household, any family member that's got anger management issues, um, yeah, yeah, childhood traumas, childhood experiences drive adult choices.
Driving our subconscious? Is it driving our behavior as adults? Partly, but then also it can't be completely that, because we know we just also have a sin nature that was inherited from Adam that.
Ah, so we're just inherently bad people. We're just inherently bad creatures because of original sin. And so, like you said, it's not all your fault that you make bad decisions. See, that's how people dodge accountability.
ultimately is responsible for the wrong things that we do. Carl Jung was one of Freud's students, and he expanded on this idea of the inner child and what he called the divine child. Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist and psychologist who lived from 1875 to 1961. He was hugely influential in the field of psychology, and he's best known for developing the concept of archetypes, so the kind of types that people can be. And one of these archetypes is the divine child. And in Jung,
Something else that about L. Ron Hubbard, he liked Jung. In fact, Jung came up with the galvanometer, the little device that's self-powered and you hang on to two leads, and then like back in the 50s, it was a bit of a parlor game, and like a girl would grab a hold of it. Do you want so and so to kiss you? And you'd watch the needle move because conductivity changes in the body with chemical releases and such. Anyway, L. Ron Hubbard took Young's galvanometer and turned it into the E meter, the cans. Anyway, it's a whole crazy thing. But yeah, let me back up here a little bit. Let's get back to her.
best known for developing the concept of archetypes, so the kind of types that people can be. And one of these archetypes is the divine child. And in Jung's conception, it wasn't just the childhood trauma that affected you, but actually the concept that there was a pure self inside of you trying to become whole. And if
And it's true. It's true. Okay, so during my deconstruction, I had to shed things like being an adamant supporter of the death penalty and an adamant opponent of abortion and believing that everybody needed to be Christian and all these different things. These were not ideas that I could hold true to myself. When I did my religious deconstruction, I had to do my political deconstruction as well. I had to unlearn a lot. I had to relearn a lot. I was learning facts while I was overwriting what had been forced upon me, had been indoctrinated upon me, what I had been inculcated on. Um, anyway, uh, let's get back to Allie.
you read my first book, or if you're familiar with people like Glennon Doyle or even people like Rachel Hollis, they might not directly cite the psychological literature, but this idea of this divine pure self inside of you, this concept of basically having an inner goddess, that if it weren't for the mean things people did or said to you, if it weren't for capitalism and the patriarchy and racism and all of these unfair systems, if it wasn't for mass advertising and unfair beauty standards, she would be perfect. And you're
Well, now I don't know about taking it to all that perfect thing, but yeah, those are all negative aspects of society, and the mass advertising is a direct derivative up to and including political campaigns the way we see them. All this advertising that we see, all this marketing, is directly derived from the work of Edward Bernays, like 100 years ago. Um, and check out The Century of Self. It's a great four-part production. If you haven't seen it yet, you really should. Anyway, um, when one is raised in a dangerous environment, they they don't learn to pick up on the things that people outside that environment might consider red flags. And this is why quite often individuals who come out of traumatic high control environments end up going off into risky behaviors, risky sexual behaviors, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, addiction, all kinds of crazy stuff. Anyway, let's get back to Allie.
goal in life, your journey in life is to go back and find her and to release her from all of these unfair expectations and your childhood trauma. And once you're able to do that, then you can manifest all of these different areas of success. I'm not
And it's true, it does work that way. Whenever I figured out that I could shed shame for things that are just like normal human behaviors, normal human things that aren't hurting anybody without their consent, and I'm happy with it, and my partner's happy with it, and the people around me are happy with my decisions because I've decided I didn't have to let anybody else make decisions for me. I found myself and I found the ability to forgive myself for things in the past and make amends for those bad things in the future, which is why I'm making these videos. Having been a MAGA live streamer, I created some damage with ones and zeros. With a life of voting Republican, I created a lot of problems. And there's people outside this bubble that don't know, don't understand, they don't have the view, they don't have to bring in another archaeological term, they don't have the datum point to understand what's really going on. So this is why I work a very different angle than everybody else does. Where it's taking a village to untangle this Gordian knot that is Christian nationalism.
Not saying that's the fullness of what Young taught, but we certainly see that narrative in so much of what women read and are taught today. This underlying assumption that if it weren't for all of these other factors, my inner self would be perfect and perfectly loved. And if I can find her and find a way to perfectly love her and heal her, then I'll just be okay.
Yeah, yeah, Allie, girl, it works that way. It really does. When you can forgive yourself, when you can learn to love yourself, not hate yourself, then it's a whole lot easier to accept other human beings. I mean, how could I have maintained a MAGA ideology, any of it, and been able to accept myself as a male that presents with some feminine qualities as a result of puberty? That puts me on the transsexual spectrum. So if why would I want to hold to an ideology that would force me to hate myself when what I've chosen for myself isn't hurting anybody else? It's not hurting me. So, Allie, girl, just if you can love yourself, it's easier to love others.
That is a secular new age idea. It's not a biblical idea. Jeremiah 17 tells us that our heart is actually desperately sick. Who can understand it? It's not something that we should follow. Again,
But also, didn't your Jesus say, love one another as I have loved you, for by these works they will know you are my followers? Good grief, girl.
we inherited our sin from Adam. And so we are depraved inside. We don't have a beautiful, perfect inner goddess. We are sinners.
Okay, you can drop the goddess or goddess, inner God talk unless you're talking about Ken Copeland and the whole I am doctrine, and that's oh girl, you got me wound up. Anyway, uh, Alan, holy cow! If you just drop that word that gives the perception of self deification, again, Ken Copeland. Uh, and you could change that to recognizing that inner self, that inner child, that child that didn't get the attention it needed when you were a child. Where were your parents when you were, I don't know, 12, 13 years old? Were you a latchkey kid? I'm just wondering. For some reason I get this vibe that you've never been poor. So you've never actually had to deal with genuine reality. I could be wrong. I don't know what her economic background is, but given where she is working over at Blaze, and then again, if she does have roots like that, she may have forgotten them. We can talk about Candace some other time.
Who need to be saved. And so this journey to finding the untainted, perfect, divine self inside of us is a losing battle. That
Yeah, because there is no divine self. Not in a deified supernatural evangelical concept. Oh my goodness. I need to stop on that.
Actually will just encourage more self-focus, which is the thing that is oppressing and trapping us, not the thing that's going to liberate us.
Unless you can take inventory of the things that you can control and can change to improve the general quality of your life, like, say, oh, I don't know, picking new friends, moving to a different town, selling a house, or, whatever is causing you grief at the moment that you have control to change. And then maybe work on the idea of accepting those things that you can't change and deciding which of those you genuinely want to worry about.
Um, the Jungian concept of the inner child really moved beyond psychology circles and into mainstream awareness in the 1990s. It was largely through the influence of an American counselor named John Bradshaw in 19.
Okay. So what she's saying is true. I'm not sure exactly where she's going with this, but in 2025, 2026, haven't PDF files. God, I hate saying self-censoring. Uh, but aren't those who harm children like everywhere? I mean, it's part of the conversation of society now, right? Revealing these problems so that we as a culture can work on them. This is another one of the concepts. This community effort for improvement is another one of the concepts of transformative justice. Is how we change and grow as communities, as everywhere from your local community, your neighborhood, all the way up to the whole world, for crying out loud. Anyway, I'm digressing, and I really want to get through this Allie Beth piece.
1992, Bradshaw published Homecoming, and it became a New York Times bestseller. And in that book, he argued that the inner child carries unmet emotional needs, that individuals could begin healing from mental trauma by reparenting themselves. So that's a lot of what we're seeing on TikTok. So the
All right, so I just got to cut in there. If you want to know more about working with these things, there's a couple of YouTubers that I can recommend personally. Jerry Wise and Patrick Teahan, Teahan. They're both childhood trauma specialists. They're both therapists, certified, legitimate therapists. Um, anyway, there are certain behaviors that present in adulthood that can be linked back to emotional neglect or physical abuse, whether it's aggressive corrective punishment or verbal or intimate. Um, and it's this whole massive field, but it's outside their name it and claim it prosperity gospel, word of faith. Oh, good grief, wealth transfer nonsense. Anyway, I don't know if she believes in wealth transfer, but she's definitely talking like one of these. I don't know, maybe ARC, Association of Related Churches. She doesn't sound like she's talking full NAR, New Apostolic Reformation. She might be. I'm not that familiar with her connections. Well, okay, let's see. She plays TV. I think she's connected to Glenn Beck, and Glenn Beck talks to a lot of those guys over there at Flashpoint. It's a crazy web. Anyway, back to Allie.
first concept that we'll talk about today is the inner child theory. The second one is shadow work. And the third one is somatic therapy. Okay. So that's like the body keeps score. You're holding trauma in your body. Okay. Wait till we get to all of these because I know some of you are gunning to, try to already respond. So let's go to the first, this idea of the inner child. So, depending on your TikTok algorithm, you may have come across some videos of grown women, adult women, coaxing themselves through situations as if they're children. And I am playing these for you to give you an example of what I'm talking about so you don't think I'm just pulling this out of a hat. Not
Okay, so I hadn't previewed this far through the video, so here on out, it's all cold reactions. And some of those reactions I've given so far were things I had missed the first time because I was just like kind of scanning over it just to see what she had to say. So let's do this.
Not to mock these people, certainly not to make them a target for anything, but these people did post this publicly. And so I think it's fair to say we're talking about a concept. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Shot one.
Oh, so I'm doing the same thing Allie did. All right, let's back that up again so we can get that unedited or uninterrupted.
So I think it's fair to say we're talking about a concept. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Shot one.
Hey, sweetie. I'm really sorry that she hit you, that she's been hitting you. You're sad and you're mad, and you also feel like you need to forgive her because she's little. And I love that about you. But right now, you just get to be upset that you've been hit, okay? Yeah, you don't like it. You don't like it.
Reassuring affirmations. Oh my goodness. So that is a legitimate form of therapy. It is a healing technique that works for many. It has a proven track record. So let's see what this Christian nationalist has to say about it.
Okay.
Inspiration Camp Meeting, a place to encounter God
Of course,
and step into
of
next
course, we got
level
a
harvest.
commercial.
So I'm just going to play that one example. The other example that we had to play was actually the video that we've already played in the past, and you saw the voiceover of that just a few minutes ago. But there are several videos like this, and I'm not minimizing the hurt feelings that these people have. I simply do not think that talking to ourselves as children is actually the path that we are supposed to take to deal with very real pain. So I want to talk about what the inner child concept is and how it originated. That tells us
Mm, wow. I think I would enjoy it. Well, it'd probably be just frustrating trying to actually have a conversation with her. I might be able to ask her some questions though that would provoke some thinking, maybe. I don't know. She's pretty well versed in thought stopping techniques.
a lot about what it means and if Christians should be toying with it. It's not just a social media fad. This psychological term inner child actually has roots in the New Age movement and, quite frankly, has parts of it that a Christian really just shouldn't tolerate and shouldn't.
She's applying the same logic to this as I've heard many Christian nationalists apply to yoga. Yoga can be a healthy exercise, great for the body. I need to get back to it myself. But then you look at, uh, um, oh God, we've been watching this Rajneesh. We've been watching this Rajneesh documentary series. It's actually pretty cool. But Rajneesh and several other individuals have taken yoga and weaponized it into a cult setting. Yeah, yoga cults are real. And my partner, when I first told her that, she was like, "Wait, what?" They took the least harmful thing on earth and turned it into a weapon. I'm like, yeah, unscrupulous humans are going to do that. Anyway, so she's applying that same logic that yoga is evil because it's not Christian. That to this whole idea of seeking that inner child to actually help heal yourself, um, or work on healing yourself. It takes a village. I'm so thankful for my support network, but girl,
play with. So let's go back to its beginnings. Sigmund Freud, a lot of you know who he is. He was an Austrian physician. He was often called the father of modern psychology. He argued that early childhood experiences form unconscious patterns in our thinking. And he popularized the idea that repressed childhood trauma is what drives much of our adult behavior. So already you
So let's say, for example, there's a particular fragrance, a particular smell that triggers a particularly painful thought. Like, say, oh, I don't know, the smell of molasses cookies baking, reminding you of your late mother, or something to that effect. Maybe when you see Christmas trees and Christmas decorations going up, it reminds you of that white flocked Christmas tree that your grandmother had with the blue glass Christmas balls on it. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, I'm digressing again.
can see that some of that could be considered true, and other parts of it you're like, well, is that true? Does it really drive all of our unconscious patterns of thinking, or even most of our unconscious patterns of thinking? Does it
How about the sound of clinking rocks glasses coming from the other room, or other auditories that signal that there could be trouble coming because somebody is drinking, and you know that individual is not going to be able to maintain their temper after they've reached a certain point. You know good and well that they can't stop drinking before they cross that line. In fact, quite often go well beyond that line. So if you've ever lived with or grown up around an alcoholic, you understand what I'm talking about. So there are certain cues that will trigger that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn reaction. And yeah, that's rooted in that early trauma or any trauma.
really contribute majorly to who we are and what we do as adults? I think all of us, just using our own common sense, whether you're a psychiatrist, psychologist, or not, can say, yeah, of course, things that have happened to us may affect how we think, and how we think may affect how we talk and the things that we do. But it driving our subconscious? Is it driving our behavior as adults? Partly.
Well, if you start drinking at the age of 12, then drinking as an adult is probably driven by that because you're an alcoholic. Um, but that's probably an extreme example. Maybe cigarettes would be more. Well, that's a pretty dangerous example too. Cussing, beating on your peers, like pummeling them because playground nonsense. That's anyway. Back to Allie.
But then also, it can't be completely that, because we know we just also have a sin nature that was inherited from Adam that ultimately is responsible for the wrong things that we do.
Oh, bad blood theory. Good grief, man. These people are so good at coming up with excuses, aren't they?
Carl Jung was one of Freud's students, and he expanded on this idea of the inner child and what he called the divine child. Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist and psychologist who lived from 1875 to 1961. He was hugely influential in the field of psychology, and he's best known for developing the concept of archetypes, so the kind of types that people can be. And one of these archetypes is the divine child. And in Jung's conception, it wasn't just the childhood trauma.
Okay. So her understanding, or her explanation, her translation of the archetypes as the different kinds of individuals or persons that you can be. And then one of the archetypes is the inner child. So it's like she's saying, it's almost like sounds almost like she thinks that when you're addressing that aspect of your personality, that inner child, that you are becoming that inner child. Man, This was one of the things that frustrated me out of MAGA. They 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 can't or don't seem to be able to understand the concepts of nuance. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
trauma that affected you, but actually the concept that there was a pure self inside of you trying to become whole. And if you read my first book, or if you're familiar with people like Glennon Doyle, or even people like Rachel Hollis, they might not directly cite the psychological literature, but this idea of this divine pure self inside of you, this concept of basically having an inner goddess, that if it weren't for the mean things people did or said to you, if it weren't for capitalism and the patriarchy and racism and all of these unfair systems, if it wasn't for mass advertising and unfair beauty standards, she would be perfect. And your goal in life, your journey in life, is to go back and find her and to release her from all of these unfair expectations and your childhood trauma. And once you're able to do that, then you can manifest all of these different areas of success. I'm not saying that's the fullness of what Jung taught, but we certainly see that narrative in so much of what women read and are taught today. This underlying assumption that if it weren't for all of these other factors, my inner self would be perfect and perfectly loved. And if I can find her and find a way to perfectly love her and heal her, then I'll just be okay. That is a secular new age idea. It's not a biblical idea. Jeremiah 17 tells us that our heart is actually desperately sick. Who can understand it? It's not something that we should follow. Again, we inherited our sin from Adam. And so we are depraved inside. We don't have a beautiful, perfect inner goddess. We are sinners who need to be saved. And so this journey to finding the untainted, perfect, divine self inside of us is a losing battle that actually will just encourage more self-focus, which is the thing that is oppressing and trapping us, not the thing that's going to liberate us. It's really important to us that you subscribe.
All right. Well, it's obvious that she has no understanding of how the human psyche functions. Um, it shows that she has no understanding of what Carl Jung was trying to say, or what we're trying to say even today, about going back and and finding those wounds that we took, and figuring out how those childhood traumas were learning to understand that those childhood traumas are linked to the autoimmune diseases that we suffer as adults, and why it is that we need to learn how to navigate our lives a little more mindfully and not let chronic pain interfere with our mood and our engagement with our fellow humans. Um, yeah, it's taken me a lot of work to get to where I am. So I I don't find it demeaning for myself if somebody else says something like "once MAGA, always MAGA," or "oh, you've gone to the dark side, so now you're possessed by a demon." Those words don't hurt me, because they're coming from people that are not willing to allow other humans to change and grow, and that makes me sad. That makes me sad. I'm constantly, all the time. I have seen so many people around me growing over the last couple of years, and I try to lead by example. So if you want to be closed-minded and not accept changes, that's on you. That's not my problem. That's on you. Um, if you think that's I'm off base because I left MAGA, again, that's on you. I've made my choices for my life, and I'm comfortable with them. I'm happy with them, and I have people all around me that are happy. Yeah, sure, I'm agnostic. I I'm like Fox Mulder. I want to believe, but like Gandhi said, I like your Jesus. I just not real fond of his followers. Although I do associate with some really solid people that are progressive Christians. I, I, they're like James Talarico type Christians. All right, they're on that caliber. Except they're not. Well, there are a couple of politicians in there. At least one. But I'm digressing again. I just I'm just stunned when I hear people like Allie talking about toxic empathy and not being able to understand the concept, the true concept of inner child work and learning how to reparent that child because they were neglected on this, that, or some other level. Some most often multiple levels. So yeah, mental health genuinely matters. Genuinely matters. And it can be painful. It often is painful to work through this stuff. Um, I've survived domestic violence. I survived childhood sexual assault. My generation and my mom on my mom's side of the family, most of us have worked through it. I guess I have one cousin I still have contact with on occasion. Um, I'm concerned about the others. Uh, it's been tough looking for accountability on anything. Anyway, uh, getting real personal here. So if you hung out to the end, this went way longer than I thought it would. That's like an 11-minute video, and I'm at what, 35 minutes, so triple the time. That's not too bad. But if you hung out to the end, you got a good chance to get a peek into my heart and my past. And I hope you can take that into consideration as we move forward with these videos. And until the next one, please take care of yourself so you can help take care of others. Oh, wait, hold up. Let me back up. That whole like, share, subscribe, if you can manage that, I greatly appreciate it. Comments, I understand, help the algorithms. And apparently, people are liking my work on Doug Wilson. Man, that guy's a real piece of work. But there's so many of these people that I feel I need to talk about. There's a couple of lesser preachers that I've directly engaged with on in their comments, and I we'll get there. We'll get there. Good grief. I have no end to my work. Not that I can see. Anyway, now please take care of yourself so you can help take care of each other. Get the rest that you need, drink those fluids, and remember, please remember, mental health matters.